Welcome back. You're watching France 24. Coming up, 11 Paris museums close next Saturday. Shops shuttered on the Champs-Élysées, the French capital, on high alert as yellow vest marchers maintain protests despite a freeze on fuel tax hikes. Germany's Christian Democrats open a conference in Hamburg to pick a party leader to succeed Angela Merkel. CDU bigwigs at loggerheads over the choice. China denounces the arrest of phone giant Huawei's chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou faces extradition from Canada to the U.S. over alleged Iran sanctions violations. Markets tumble as investors doubt that a trade war truce between Beijing and Washington will hold. After the news, the France 24 debate and the pressure from Washington on Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince. Is the outrage over the murder of Jamal Khashoggi what has brought the two sides in the Yemen war to the negotiating table? And how effective will Donald Trump's plea be to keep the price down as OPEC ministers meet in Vienna? Your reactions on Facebook and on Twitter. Hashtag F24Debate. After last Saturday's worst rioting in Paris in a decade, authorities taking no chances. We've gotten word now that the Eiffel Tower will be closed all day Saturday. So will 11 museums, the opera canceled. Same with Paris Saint-Germain's home football match. Riot police bracing themselves for the next round of Yellow Vest protests. Yellow Vests who are calling for more concessions after the government's freeze on fuel tax hikes. François Vibaud has more.
Nicknamed the most beautiful avenue in the world, the Champs-Élysées now stripped of its metal grates, its benches, anything that could be used as a weapon or barricade ahead of Saturday's Yellow Vest demonstrations. The boarded-up windows are reminiscent of hurricane preparations. This car dealership is taking no chances.
What we're going to do is take out this car right here and all the other ones you see in the back. Of course, we're taking extra precautions because these cars are worth a lot of money, so we'd rather not leave them in the showroom. Here we've put up wooden beams and thick planks outside the windows, which should protect the glass.
This motorbike shop was completely vandalized last Saturday, so this time round, they've hired protection.
The store is going to be closed, and we'll have private security guards inside as well as outside. Even if it's just temporary, we're taking this very seriously.
All over the country, requests for private security have seen a significant uptick.
Demand from shops and supermarkets has doubled, and not just in the capital.
According to the mayor of Paris, property damage from last weekend's protest may be as high as €4 million.
In Hamburg, the opening of the Christian Democrats Party conference to pick a successor to Angela Merkel at the helm of the CDU. Her protege, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, faces a tough challenge from the more conservative Friedrich Merz, who was sidelined by Merkel's rise to power. Angela Merkel, who's to stay on as chancellor after the weekend vote.
I feel very grateful. I was the party leader for the last 18 years. That's a very long time. And during this period, the CDU had ups and downs. But it also managed to have a chancellor 4 different times. And this is something we have to be thankful and grateful for. Now it's time to prepare for the next federal election in these fast-changing times.
And earlier we spoke to correspondent Emmanuel Chaz, who commented on the jousting that's begun between Merkel's current and former economy ministers.
There's a very unusual move going on at the CDU at the moment, where we see the president of the Bundestag, Wolfgang Schäuble, breaking with the tradition of confidentiality, where the prominent personalities of the party usually keep their opinions to themselves ahead of a vote. And Wolfgang Schäuble announced his endorsement of candidate Friedrich Merz, and in doing so, he angered the current Minister of Economic Affairs, Peter Altmaier, who also revealed his preferences. He said he would, for one, be in favor of the candidate and General Secretary of the CDU, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer. Now, it's an unusual move, but it's not really surprising given the history of both Schäuble and Peter Altmaier. Altmaier is one of Merkel's closest allies, and he has always been very loyal to the Chancellor. Hence, it's not surprising that he would vote for her preferred candidate. And Wolfgang Schäuble, on the other hand, is now supporting Merkel's contender and also opponent, as both him and Merz are known for disagreeing with the Chancellor's policy.
Emmanuel Chazet. The vote on Theresa May's Brexit divorce deal will indeed take place next Tuesday. The Prime Minister's office confirming the date. That's because there'd been speculation raised by the Times of London of a postponement to give the Conservative leader more time to convince lawmakers.
I think on more than one occasion.
Either way, warn bookmakers, it's going to be a very heavy lift for the PM. Catherine Viette has more.
When it comes to Brexit, all bets are on. British bookmakers are taking odds on a number of scenarios, including whether the Brexit bill will pass next week in Parliament.
It's now 1 to 8 that it won't go through. So what we're saying is that it's around an 18% chance that Theresa May will manage to get this through. And pretty worryingly also is that if it doesn't go through the first time, we don't think it will get through at all, even later on in March.
Betting on the odds of a second referendum is also proving popular.
The betting to suggest of whether there will be a second EU referendum has gone absolutely crazy. So I think that it works out around 60% chance there'll be a second referendum.
Meanwhile, many British companies say they're stockpiling supplies over fears that raw materials will increase in price if the no-deal Brexit scenario comes to pass. 20% of this small chocolate maker's exports go to the EU. Now the company's worried it might have to move its base of operations.
So no-deal scenario really scares me. I'm also worried that we might get a situation that we sometimes get with Japan and the US, in so much as you get unseen protectionism. Regulations are strictly enforced, we're no longer part of the club, and goods can get rejected perhaps more easily.
The specter of border checks and blocked ports is threatening the 476 billion euros worth of goods that move back and forth between the UK and the EU.
Brutal day for world markets. The New York Stock Exchange down some 600 points earlier. The arrest of the chief financial officer of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei raising doubts over the recent trade truce agreed to by U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. Meng Wanzhou to be extradited from Canada to the U.S. reportedly over the alleged flouting of Iran sanctions. Earlier, we spoke to correspondent Charles Pellegrin.
The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs held a press conference this Thursday and basically reiterated what had been said by the Chinese embassy in Canada earlier in the day. They want the immediate release of Meng Wanzhou, and they want clarification as to why the United States and Canada arrested her and want to extradite her to the United States. And there was a similar sense of anger on Chinese social media this Thursday as well, with people there really incensed at the treatment that Huawei has been given, and wondering if they should boycott Apple products as revenge and encouraging other users to buy Huawei products to support the brand. And this shows the attachment that people here have for Huawei, which is really a national pride, a national technological champion. Well, what are the reasons behind this arrest? Well, no official reason has been given so far, but a number of American media sources say that Huawei may have violated American sanctions against Iran by exporting American-made products to Iran. And that a probe about this very case had been opened 2 years ago in New York. Other Chinese telecom equipment makers have been the targets of these accusations before, notably ZTE, and they had to endure some really heavy sanctions from the United States as a result. But there could be other reasons for this arrest as well, namely that for Washington, there's a fear that Beijing could be taking the lead in key technological sectors, notably the setting up of 5G mobile networks around the world, and all of this with the huge support of the government in Beijing.
Pellegrin. After Wednesday's state funeral in Washington for former U.S. President George Herbert Walker Bush, the journey to his final resting place in College Station, Texas, a little bit later on. Now, earlier, there was a funeral service that took place in Houston. There you see his son, George W. Bush, alongside wife Laura in the front row next to the casket. A funeral train carrying that casket will make the journey some 70 miles from Houston to College Station, where he'll be buried at the campus of Texas A&M alongside his wife, Barbara. There you see live images. It's going to be the first funeral train since Dwight D. Eisenhower's a half century ago.